Right before I started our business, Magnetic Alliance, there was one person who wasn't intentionally going to be a client or anything. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. And he was the guy who did the electrical wiring, all the lights, PowerPoints and stuff for my house. And it was the process when we were doing the selections of where to place the lights and everything, and we had gotten talking. And what ended up happening was this. He had about 20 staff, and every morning they would go to his warehouse, and they were electricians, right? So they'd turn up in all their vans. Some of them were employed, some of them were subcontractors. So they were all a mixture, and they would spend about an hour every single morning going through the warehouse, grabbing PowerPoints, grabbing light switches, grabbing tools, and it was just chaos. And they'd talk to each other, and they would just sit there and chat, have a smoke. And I said, man, that's costing you 20 people times by 1 hour their hourly rate. And he goes, yeah, man, it's painful. Yeah, every single day they spend at least 1 hour doing all this stuff. And I don't know how to get them out the door. You know, I really just want them out working because it's costing him money. So we came up with this strategy of actually getting all the jobs prepared and getting the admin team inside to write up all the jobs beforehand, the night before, so they know the next day what they're going to do. But we also employed a warehouse manager so that he would then, it turned out to be a he, but he would then get the admin job sheets, and he would package everything up in a box. So for particular jobs, let's say for tradie A, he would have 2 jobs for the day. So he would pack 2 boxes for him with all the gear and how much gear that was being given to him. Because the problem that he had was he didn't know what people were taking. So very, very often they would run out of stuff. And they're like, we're pretty sure we had enough for the job. But some people, I took some extra because, you know, sometimes I break it or some of it's malfunctioned or whatever it is. So he has zero idea what the stock control is. Who's got what, where, how much of it, no clue. And he said, yeah, mate, the problem is the boys, some of them are subbies, and they take the gear and they use it for their jobs. And, you know, that's costing him money too, because they're taking stuff, they're taking tools, they're taking gear, and they're using it for themselves, for other contracts that they have. So, you know, not only was he losing the time, he was also losing the inventory because of lack of inventory control. So there are all these problems that were going on all at once. So the warehouse manager would be the solution to that, because what happened, we just said, look, no one is coming into the warehouse. They turn up in the morning, drive their vans there. The boxes with their names were already prepared. They just go in, pick up their box and leave. And that was it. They don't get to go around the warehouse. They don't get to grab anything. If they have a broken tool, they would have a log of what tool was being lent to them, and they had to return it, like if it was a drill or a saw, whatever it was. And they would have the exact specifications for the job, the amount of inventory that they would have. If there were any spares, it was all recorded, and they would have to then bring it back if there were any extras. At any point in time, the company knew where the inventory was going, how much of the inventory was going where, and if people were breaking it all the time, they could tell who was breaking this gear all the time, right? So what happened was, instead of taking 1 hour to mess around, talk to each other, have a smoke, pull some gear, couple of guys fighting because they're taking the last bit of gear and then someone's complaining. They turn up, they go to the inside where the warehouse manager is, they get given a box and they leave. And that whole entire process went from 1 hour every morning to 5 minutes every morning. So he saved 55 minutes of labor time that he was paying these guys for. So all of a sudden his profitability went up because he had to pay less time for waste. And by doing that as well, he saved on the inventory, which was being used for various purposes outside of his work. So the natural result of having that extra bit of efficiency and the extra cash from not losing inventory, he was able to then take on more work. And he went from $2 million a year to $4 million a year. And I didn't realize this until he told me, you know, a little bit down the track, because he actually, when my house was built, just gave me all the gear. Like, he just said, I'm just doing it at cost for you. I'm basically just giving you all the PowerPoints, the light switches, the lights, the down lights, everything, the LED lights. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, thank you. You know, that's super generous because I had quite a fair few. I think I had about at least 60 LED lights, and then I had like all sorts of stuff. And he goes, mate, like, I am super grateful, super grateful. And I said, well, tell me what's happened with the business. And he said, since we made those changes, literally we doubled our business. We went from $2 million to $4 million, and profit went up more than double as well. So what he was taking home was, really, really, really good. He was so happy. And then his business partner as well, they're both making good money. And he goes, yeah, but, my business partner is a bit upset with you. I said, why? Like, you said your business doubled, you're more profitable, you've got time, because he went from 80 hours a week and he was unhealthy. That was part of the thing. He was saying, oh man, I'm overweight. My doctor says I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. And he said, when I saw him, he was like really, really trim, looked really fit. And he said, mate, like, I went from 80 hours a week to 5 hours a week. I didn't have to deal with all this messing around with these guys. We're able to take on more work. The guys are just busy. They're getting paid. They're happy. And he's working 5 hours a week. And goes, man, I'm just fishing. I'm just going out fishing. And I said, so why is your business partner upset with me? He goes, oh, yeah, because he doesn't have any hobbies. He's just in the warehouse sweeping the floor going, freaking Mark. So yeah, it was a good, little experiment, I guess. And that's one of the things that led us to go, hey, when we start our business, eventually what we ended up deciding was we'll help business owners grow their business, because things like that is something I have a lot of experience and something that I really love doing. I've done it a lot across many different businesses, and it's easy for me. It's beneficial for the business owner if they implement. If they don't implement, then you end up getting a complainer going, oh, this was going to happen, that was going to happen, but there's no change. So that's an example of a guy who did simple things, doubled his revenue from 2 million to 4 million, more than doubled his profit, ended up being so grateful. He gave me all my electrical stuff in my new house that I built for free, and just, became someone who, at time to time, we'd just have a chat, we'd call each other, and, life-changing kind of thing for him with his health, with his financials. He's got time with his family. He's got time with his kids. He's got time for his hobbies. And that's the beauty of business that I really, really like. I like seeing people succeed and people grow. And, the other end of it, you always get people who want the magic pill. We had these guys who said, oh, I want what the other guys got. Like, give us the result, like, help us with this results. And so we went through a very similar process and told them everything they needed to do. And 3 months later, they actually called and said, oh, we're not getting the results. I'm a bit disappointed that, I haven't got what the other guys got. And I said, okay, well, let's pull out your report that we wrote for you. I went through the trouble of writing everything down step by step. It's like a 100-page report on everything you needed to do. And he goes, oh, well, I haven't read it yet. It's like, what? I went through, did all that work, wrote everything you need to do down, and he hasn't even read it yet. It's like, how do you expect to actually change anything without actually implementing anything, without even reading the thing that we sent over? So yeah, he goes, yeah, well, I thought, when we talked to you, everything was just going to change. It's like, well, I have a strategy and I have a plan, but I am not a magician. I am not David Copperfield. And I'm not the Wizard of Oz. So you're going to have to implement this stuff. So, seeing some of that stuff, it actually changed our business in a couple of ways. One is we ended up helping implement a lot more, but also we were also very selective with who we dealt with a lot more, because a lot of people just want the magic pill. A lot of people want the results, but they're not willing to do any of the work. So, and they go from one place to another place and another place, and they're always looking for that magic pill where someone will change their life and make them millionaires. And that's very unrealistic. If you're a business owner and you're expecting that, you will never get there. Because if people could get that result doing everything, then they might as well do it for themselves. They're not going to do it for you. So I've just never seen a business owner who doesn't implement or doesn't implement well get anywhere. Like, you gotta have implementation. You can't build half a website and expect a result, right? If you build 50% of a website, you get zero. You can build 70% of a website, you get zero. You can't build 3/4 of a house and expect to live in it. There's no plumbing, there's no water, there's no electricity. It's not going to be livable. And it's the same with your business, same with a project. You can't implement 50%, 60%, 70% of anything. You're not going to get anything for that. You don't get 70% of the results. You get 0% of the results. So without implementation, nothing will work. And that's where a lot of people really, really screw up or are very weak at. That's where they fail. The strategy's there, the plan is there. You've even got implementation support. But if you can't get that thing done, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the problem that a lot of business owners have, who find themselves in trouble.